History. Lesson 9, Chapter 18, The Middle East, the Rocky Road to Reconciliation. Chapter 18 examines developments in the Middle East in the 1990s and 2000s, including the Gulf War of 1991, which prevented Iraq's attempt to annex neighboring Kuwait, and the troublesome Arab-Israeli conflict, which remains unresolved. By the 1980s, almost all Middle Eastern states, except Israel, were under control of authoritarian regimes. None of these states functioned as democracies with free elections or guarantees of civil liberties for their citizens. One of the major reasons for the authoritarian state governments was because Middle Eastern states were not homogeneous. Most states were made up of antagonistic social, ethnic, and religious communities created out of the former Ottoman Empire. Iraq was a post-World War I creation, a League of Nations mandate carved out of the former Ottoman Empire. Diverse Iraqi population include most major ethnic and religious groups of the Middle East, including Shia and Sunni Muslims, Christians, and Kurds. Iraq got its independence from Britain in 1940 under King Faisal, who was overthrown by a military coup in 1959, like Egypt. In 1969, the Ba'ath Party seized power in a bloody coup. The Ba'ath Party is an Arab political party founded in 1943 in Syria and had two major objectives. One was the implementation of socialism, and the second was Arab unity. In Iraq, the Ba'ath Party was largely secularist and progressive, and one of its leaders, of course, was Saddam Hussein. Hussein was born in 1937 into a family of peasant farmers and was credited with 3 to 4 killings by the age of 22. He joined the Ba'ath Party in Baghdad and was attracted by the Arab nationalism of the 1950s, in particular by Nasser in Egypt. Becoming a rising star in the party, Hussein was a strong man who controlled Iraqi's security services, and by 1979, Hussein had positioned himself to have dictatorial powers. In 1980, Iraq launched a failed invasion of Iran with the goals of establishing regional hegemony, suppressing militant Islamist regimes, and containing the spread of Islamist ideology. In this, Iraq had the support of other oil-rich states such as Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and others, who feared the threat of this Islamist ideology to their nations. In the 1980 war, the long war dragged out for 8 years. Both sides became exhausted. It was ended by a UN-sponsored ceasefire, and neither side won territory. So Saddam Hussein had failed in Iran, but was not done looking for land and oil, and soon turned to neighboring Kuwait. Iraq claimed that Kuwait was stealing its oil, that it was slant drilling and taking oil from Iraqi oil fields. In the summer of 1990, Iraqi troops invaded Kuwait, and Kuwait was declared to be the 19th province of Iraq. Soon afterwards, American troops were dispatched to Saudi Arabia to prevent Iraq from invading this neighboring country, an important ally and oil producer. For the Kuwait situation, the Americans secured UN Security Council resolutions aimed at repelling the invasion of Kuwait, which, along with imposing economic sanctions, authorized the use of force. Operation Desert Storm was a military coalition led by the Americans against Iraq, the largest military coalition since World War II, and for many nations, including Canada, was the first to involve troop action since the Korean War. The war was a rout for the coalition forces, although it did not bring Saddam Hussein. The chapter also explains Saddam Hussein. The chapter also explains in detail developments in the Arab-Israeli conflict in the Middle East in the 1990s and 2000s. One of the themes explored is how leaders in Israel and of the Palestinian Liberation Organization were constrained in how they approached the peace process by internal constraints. That is, how the leadership of Israel and of the Palestinian people, via the Palestinian Liberation Organization, were hampered by the need to please the people at home because of internal political factors. In Israel, there were the shifting policies of the different governments, from the long-serving right-wing Likud governments, which had sponsored Jewish settlements in lands occupied by Israel but claimed by other Arab states on the one hand, and, for example, in 1992, when the Labour Party won an election and ended 15 years of rule by Likud, and the Labour Party sought a separate course of action to please its constituency. The Labour government, for example, ended and reversed some Jewish housing settlement plans. And a year later, in 1993, the Palestinian Liberation Organization and Israeli governments held top-secret talks in Norway on the peace process, leading to the Oslo Peace Accord of that year signed in Washington. The Oslo Agreement promised a compromise in which Israelis would withdraw and turn over portions of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip to a soon-to-be-created Palestinian Authority led by Yasser Arafat and the PLO. One of the major problems facing the Palestinian people was that their territory was geographically disconnected and surrounded by Israeli-held territory. The chapter does a very good job of explaining in detail the nature of the developments of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and peace process in the 1990s and 2000s. In terms of what you should know for this chapter regarding the Arab-Israeli conflict, I would suggest examining and knowing the overall nature of the developments of the conflict, the major personalities, and in particular the Oslo and Wye River Accords.